Mr. Cruddis over in Barking and Dagenham. Cruddis is in the media, particularly the Mirror, all the time. He's looking in the mirror and he doesn't like what he sees there. And what he sees is that the part of the Labour vote, because no one votes Tory in those sorts of areas, part of the Labour vote has just gone down, sort of disappeared. And it's quite traumatic. And he said, we never thought these people, by which he means these working class voters, of course, would vote for other political parties, like the SNP in Scotland, like the BNP, said in Stoke, like Plaid in Wales and so on. People have found other vehicles to protest against, but a protest vote's ephemeral and in the end comes and goes with the wind. What you need is a strong, determined, viable vote, and you need to get into parliaments. The British people, and the English in particular amongst them, have seen that we can get into parliaments now. On the doorstep in the past, they say, well, I do sort of agree with you, but I hate all politicians, and in any case, you're not going to win, and you're not got into a parliament. That has been breached. In the GLA, we got over 5%, so there'll be somebody in the Welsh Assembly next time, in the Principality. We've got 2 in the European Parliament. But just think, if a proportion of UKIP's vote could have been broken off and realigned, you could have had not 2 but 12. Not 12 but 20. And once you get that sort of momentum, the system starts shaking and all sorts of people and sort of lines of force go reverberate inside the Tory party. At a local level, this is what's happening in areas like Barking and Dagenham. What's happening is that Labour are beginning to feed on their own vitals as they see another party there, knowing that people in those areas won't really vote necessarily for other parties. So when they all fall out with each other, they look across the chamber and say, I know that you secretly, comrade, agree with them. Why aren't you sitting with them? And they all fight about how anti-BNP they are and how one of them has backslid a bit because he's not as anti as the others, because it creates so much tension amongst them. As soon as you get in, the Tories will be nice to you privately, most of the time, particularly people on the centre-right of that party. UKIP will be expressionless, essentially. And so, in a strange way, you have passive allies by virtue of, once you get elected, in relation to the people who won't come out against you explicitly. Many of our people are actually too frightened to say what they think. Many of them either think we're a lunatic in our courage, or monsters, or somewhere in between, just for doing some politics, because most of our people are hiding. Because they think it's happened, there's a deluge, you just sort of go with it, you live your own life. 3 million of our people live abroad. But there is some hope here. There is the possibility that this society, which our forefathers fought for, the last members of the wartime generation of 1418, have died the other week. Men who are 109, 110, 112, 113. Some of them fought in 3 or 4 different major engagements within those wars. What did they fight for? Did they fight for South London the way it is now? Did they fight for Greenwich the way it is now and will become in the future? Did they fight for inner Manchester now? Or did they fight for a different type of England, a different type of Britain, one that resonated with its own national traditions, one which was prouder than it is today, less forlorn and less broken than it is today, less cowardly to be what it is than it is to be than they fought for at that time? When they went over the top, they didn't fight for tolerance, progress and multiculturalism. They were fighting for an identity that was ethnic, that was racial, that was culturalised. They knew who they were, even if they hadn't got the wit to express it. They knew what they were. And they had people who interpreted it for them. As Britain declines, there probably will be and the Christian religion seems to have gone for many people, there will be more of a cult of the dead, because, of course, the generation that fought in the Second War will be coming up to that time a couple of decades from now when there is none of them left. And it has to be said, would they have gone up those beaches? Would they have parachuted onto Arnhem Bridge? Would they have fought in North Africa? Would they have fought in the convoys? Would they have fought against the Chinese? Would they have endured slave labour conditions under Bushido officers in Japanese prisoners of war camp if they could have seen what this country has become now? If they could have seen what this country is like in 2009, when in 2005 we had a third of our tank corps in Iraq and we don't control the streets of South London on a Saturday night. I personally think that many of those who are dead would be shuddering in their graves if they could see what this country has become. 1/5 of us obese, 25% of all children born non-white in extraction, now as a reality. And all because our establishment has been fearful and cowardly and lazy and deconstructed and lacks pride and lacks identity and lacks vigour. Did the people who went over the top in 14 or 15 at Ypres and Passchendaele, that were battles that were virtually hell on earth for the people who experienced them, and where the surface of the moon was recreated on the surface of the earth in Belgium and France, did they lack vigour when they went over the top with the others? And all classes died proportionately in relation to the numerical pyramid in the society at the time on those muddy fields, and the same in other wars. The truth is, as we look back upon history, our enemy wasn't the German people, or the Austrian people, or the Italian people, or even the Russian people back in Crimea, or the French. The enemy has been an interconnected series of ideas which have dominated us for 60 to 70 years, called liberal ideas of one sort or another, that have led to one thing after another being given away, until the demographic nature of our cities itself is being given away, until our culture is partly in the process of being given away, although liberals believe that all can share it. But a culture that all can share doesn't have any meaning. If it's as promiscuous as that, what happens to the people who are here already? I noticed the chairman of this party was asked recently on a BBC programme, what about Trevor McDonald? And he said, well, that's all very well. He's very anglicised. He loves cricket. He's probably a Tory voter. But if he is as English as everyone else in every respect, what of the English? Who are they? What are they? How can they be defined? And the BBC interviewer, I believe it's an ex-independent journalist called Andrew Marr, quickly moved on, dear boy, to another topic, because he didn't particularly want to ask. They love to put the question, but they don't want to answer it. And the point to remember is that if the whole world comes here, and if everyone claims to be a Westerner, I had a debate once with a Muslim intellectual, and I said to him, if all can be Westerners, and if the West goes universal, what about the people who are Westerners? What about us? What about our civilization? I don't believe the West is a universal civilization, which is why we shouldn't be in Iraq, we shouldn't be in Afghanistan, but at the same time, we want to control our own country and our own streets, and we want to have our own identity here. If the era of empire is over, let the era of surrender not replace it. Let we not go from imperial domination to a situation where our old people die alone in areas where the mirror of the street says that they're strangers, even to one another. So I would ask you in the future to leaflet for this party, to raise money as you have done already for this party, to stand on occasion for this party and support those who do so, to canvass for this party, to buy its literature, to watch its propaganda, primarily but not exclusively on the internet, to vote for this party when you have the opportunity to do so, at all local elections, at regional elections. If there's an English Parliament, vote for a particular party when it comes to those elections. If there's a Democratic Senate that replaces the House of Lords in the next 5 to 10 years, don't deny yourself the possibility of voting for this party at such an election. In the coming parliamentary elections at the Westminster tier, still residually the most important parliament in our land, vote for this particular political party that will probably run more constituency candidates than it ever has before. When the devolved elections come round again in Wales and in Scotland, make sure people up there vote in the correct way. And when the European elections come round again, try and make 12 MEPs and 20 thereafter rather than 2. Try and have a massive block in the European Parliament, because the more you win, the more power you get, the more energy you have, the more the cowards come out and say, I agreed with you all along. Thank you very much.